Getting down to the wire to get your taxes in, but look what we're finding out. The IRS is giving out billions to people who pay very little or no income at all. And John says there's a fix for this. John, first of all, we got to say this is a huge $66 billion program. Essentially gives poor working people a bonus, a taxpayer-funded bonus. Go ahead.
It's terribly offensive, and we've got to get rid of the earned income tax credit to rid us of this bad idea. Let's face it, the world's poorest would give anything to live and work in the United States. So the idea that we need to subsidize the work of people lucky enough to have been born in the United States is an offense to the nation.
Jessica, should we abolish this program? It's huge, and it's not terribly effective.
Huge, we have a lot of poor people. I mean, there's a fraud component, which is obviously an issue, about people filing they haven't earned anything. But you can't get rid of the earned income tax credit without raising the minimum wage substantially. And we are talking about people who are working. These aren't freeloaders. These aren't people who are just living off welfare. They're actually out working. And there is an incentive within this program to actually keep working. So I don't really understand the argument to abolish it.
Well, here's the argument, EMAC. That fraud portion of the $66 billion is huge. It's 24% of the program. The $66 billion program, we can put up that chart again, $15.6 billion of it is improper payments. Those are people who are either lying or mistakes have been made. It's a huge problem with this program.
So what you're saying is nearly a fifth of it is fraudulent.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what happens when you have Chardonnay politicians who think that they're doing the right thing by the poor when they get a hold of a program. This is called the Earned Income Tax Credit. The problem is the EITC is given out to people if they don't report income. Hello? That is effectively saying to the thieves out there, here's a taxpayer's wallet, we put a bumper sticker on it, steal it. Take it. So what's happening, there's a cottage industry out there, David, where you have these thieving taxpayers filing for children, the elderly,
right.
People who haven't worked, and they're stealing from taxpayers. That's money right out the door.
Steve, we are getting reports from accountants and other people. We're kind of nailing down some of these reports that it is a scam, that people are being drawn in and shown how to fraud the system, how to game the system to get a piece of that $15 billion fraudulent pie.
Well, two things on it. First of all, this is an argument for the flat tax. Under my flat tax proposal, this would be phased out over 5 years. But the earned income tax credit was put in to get people out of another abomination in the government, the so-called welfare trap,
right.
Where if you were getting benefits from the government, you went out and started to work, you ended up being worse off than before. That's why the thing was brought in. The fact that it's badly administrated is no surprise for government, but as a way, and a pretty effective way with the 96 Welfare Reform Act, of getting people back in the workforce. But let's simplify the code and get a flat tax, and all of these credits can go out the window, and the fraud with it.
Well, Sabrina, we should mention, by the way, this program was originally designed by Milton Friedman, the great free market economist. He came up with the idea. It was called a negative income tax back then, originally to get people off of welfare. But later in his life, Milton Friedman said, this was a disaster. I never should have implemented. I should have seen that it was going to blow out of proportion the way it has and become a bureaucratic nightmare.
Right, and I think it's because, as Steve points out, this was an attempt to sort of move from a welfare system to one in which people were working and then were rewarded for that work. Unfortunately, it has gone awry. I think the larger story here, though, is less about the EITC and more about the ability to fraud the IRS and to sort of work the system, so to speak. We don't want to turn our backs on those in need, but what's happening here is that we're seeing that the IRS's response to all of this is, well, we just need more money in order to stop this fraud. Well, I can think of lots of ways that we could roll back the IRS, and we would have plenty of money to weed this out.
But, Mike, the point is here, this is a political season, a highly charged political season, and politicians are being asked, how are you going to save money? Here's a perfect example. $15.6 billion is fraudulent. If you don't want to get rid of the whole $66 billion program, at least get rid of that.
And then the more things they put in to achieve so-called economic justice, you notice the gap between the rich and the poor just keeps growing, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If Washington would simply get out of the way and let the economy move freely, you'd get a lot less poor people in this country, David.
If you just let birds fly as they should. All right, thank you very much.